Captain America Civil War. I really like that for a character named Captain America, that this is going to be the second movie in a row now where Captain America is actively fighting the US government. Like the last Captain America movie, the Russo brothers bring this Cold War style thriller to a blockbuster superhero movie, and I really enjoy that tone in this movie, and I think it works very well. I really like the moral ambiguity in this movie. You know, they split our heroes into two different teams led by two of the best actors in the MCU. Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. give their best performances yet, and I really like that through the course of this movie, as a viewer, you swap sides multiple times. At least I did. You know, at first I kind of agree with Robert Downey Jr., you know, I see that emotional pull that the woman who he had talked to about the kid that died in Sokovia, I see that that limitation can be a good thing to help stop, you know, civilian deaths. And especially when Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Tony Stark, is the one who created Ultron from that last Avengers movie. So I really like that emotional side, but then Captain America has good points as too. And this whole movie feels like a debate. A debate that, granted, they fight over with fists rather than just, you know, sitting down and talking it out. Which, you know, I would watch a movie with all these heroes just sitting around talking it out, you know? I would. If it was written by the Russo brothers or by Bring Back Joss Whedon, someone written with some kind of flair in the styles of these characters, absolutely I'd watch a movie. However, you know, it's an action movie, so they gotta fight it out eventually, right? However, with these splitting of sides, I'm a little confused with how each character chooses what sides they'll be on. For instance, Scarlet Witch in this movie. You think at the beginning, she accidentally destroys a building at the very beginning of the movie, and she causes civilian deaths, and you would think that she would have the same kind of arc as Tony Stark and she'd feel guilty and want to be regulated by the government. But instead, her whole choice is whether or not it's because she got locked in a room, she got grounded, basically. And she was like, oh, well, Tony Stark locked me in my room, so I'm going to go join Captain America and fight the government. And it's kind of a little bit just underdeveloped there as far as her decision. It just seems kind of random, and it should have had a more emotional pull, and I think she should have been on Tony Stark's side in this movie. As for Hawkeye, he just kind of shows up in this movie, and I guess we don't see it on screen, but he gets called by Captain America and says, hey, you want to come fight with us? And for Hawkeye, that doesn't really make any sense, because at the end of Age of Ultron, he wants to retire and be at home with his family, and then he immediately gives that up to go fight the government and end up in prison at the end. Why? Why, Hawkeye? You gave up your good thing to go fight the government because the government wanted to regulate superheroes and whatnot, so it just seems kind of random. They just wanted to put Hawkeye in this movie, and I like Hawkeye, I like Jeremy Renner, but they could have easily left him out. They left out Thor and they left out Hulk in this movie as well, so although maybe Marvel's learned their lesson. Maybe they're just leaving out Hawkeye now, because Avengers Infinity War, where's Hawkeye? I don't know. I haven't seen the movie yet. Maybe once I see the movie I'll find out maybe he is in the movie. I don't know. He hasn't been in any marketing materials for the movie. He's not on the poster. He's not in the trailers. Where is Hawkeye? I want to know. The Vision is quite confusing in this movie too. I think it makes sense he would be on Tony Stark's side, so I affirm that, you know, he's probably on the side that he should be on in this movie. However, he was such a god at the end of Age of Ultron when he was introduced, you know? He was so overpowered, he is invulnerable, he can do pretty much anything, and then here they give him a romantic kind of tension with Scarlet Witch, so much so that when she gets a scratch in battle, he kind of melts down, and then all of a sudden he can't aim worth shit, and he accidentally almost kills Rhodey, and it's just, Vision was supposed to be this ultra powerful guy, and then all of a sudden he just neutered in this movie. I mean, he's wearing sweaters all of a sudden. He just turned into Bill Cosby. Oh, didn't turn into that. Not that bad. Just like Hawkeye, Ant-Man is a guy who is quick to leave his family to fight the government in this movie. He, again, doesn't really make sense that he would be on Captain America's side. I mean, I understand that he has kind of been introduced with Falcon, so it makes sense that they would have that contact with Ant-Man and the other side wouldn't. But Ant-Man, his arc in his first movie is that Ant-Man is a crook who wants to turn good and be with his family, and he accomplishes that at the end of the movie. And then he immediately in this movie comes in and fights the US government. it doesn't make sense from a character standpoint. Granted, in the first Ant-Man movie, they did set up that he was a fan of the Avengers, so getting the chance to fight with Captain America, I guess, would kind of make sense, but overall, I think that they should have given a little bit more reasoning as opposed to just saying, oh, hey, Ant-Man can be in this movie for 5 minutes and have a cool action scene and then forget about him. This movie also sees the debut of Black Panther and the new Spider-Man. Chadwick Boseman is great as Black Panther. He definitely has his time to shine, especially now that they made the new Black Panther movie. He's fantastic in that, so I really like that casting. But Spider-Man is so perfectly casted. I think Tom Holland is the perfect Spider-Man. I really like Tobey Maguire. I grew up watching his movies. I love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies. Well, 2/3 of them aren't bad. And Andrew Garfield even. I liked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. But none of them felt like a kid, and I really like Tom Holland's casting. He's fantastic as Spider-Man. I think he's the perfect Spider-Man. And I think he was so well casted in this movie, and he is definitely a standout in this movie, even though he has only about 15 minutes of screen time. And most of it is just CGI Spider-Man fighting people. The CGI is a little bit atrocious too, because there's not a moment where I think that's a guy in a suit. It's all very CGI whenever he's fighting, which is a little bit not bad at all for Tom Holland. I mean, he's great. Just for the visual effects alone, kind of eh. Also, I like that the Russo brothers were able to sneak in Community alumni Jim Rash. Or, I'm sorry, Oscar winner Jim Rash.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling. I was just heading to judge our belated carnival when I heard you guys having a tiff. What's the rumpus?
We were debating how many times per year a man can drop in a study room in a dumb costume with irrelevant news.
But back on track, early on in this movie, Tony is confronted by a woman who's grieving the loss of her son that was taken in Sokovia. And that's a big driving force for Tony in this movie. And the real reason I think that he is on the side of, adopting the Sokovia Accords. And what I noticed on rewatch is the woman that confronts him. I really recognized her in this, in rewatching this, so I had to look her up. And she's played by an actress named Alfre Woodard, who you might recognize from the Netflix show Luke Cage, which is also in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, she plays a completely different character in that, which is really strange that Marvel has one actress playing two completely different characters. That's something that's strange. I mean, we've seen our fair share of recastings in these movies, like the Hulk or Rhodey or the nameless sidekick of Thor who turns into Zachary Levi. But we haven't really seen double casting where one actress plays two different characters. And I thought that was just a really strange thing that I picked up on in this movie. It doesn't hurt this movie, it's just something that makes you kind of shrug when you view it as a whole universe. I really like the scene where Tony Stark goes to recruit Peter Parker. I think that's a lot of fun. In your first introduction to Peter Parker, it's great, and his chemistry with Marissa Tomei makes sense when considering Robert Downey Jr. and Marissa Tomei's relationship in real life. Now, the majority of the action scenes in this movie do kind of take from the Bourne school of shaky cam. Shaky cam. And I'm not a huge fan of that style of action scenes, really. I think it works for the Bourne movies because those are very grimy, gritty action scenes where people are dying. But here, no one really dies. There's one person that dies in this whole movie, and it's Peggy, who dies of old age. So I don't feel, they have very well directed action sequences with a lot of really good action, and I believe in Disney and all the talented people that created this movie, that they're not using shaky cam to hide poor stunt work like a lot of lesser directors do. I think there's some great things going on, but when the camera is just shaking around all the time, it's not always fun. And they have these great shots in other action scenes, There's the airport fight, which is incredible, and there's no shaky cam really in that. But yet there's the scenes where Bucky and Captain America are breaking out of an apartment building, and it's just shaky cam all over. And I think it's a really cool action sequence. But the shaky cam to me is just something that gets on my nerves, especially when there's something that's very well directed that I want to get a better look at. And it puts you in the moment for sure, and I think it does work well in close quarters places like that, but it's something that I feel like it was a little bit overdone in this movie. Overall, I feel like this movie has problems committing. It wants to be a very serious drama, with these characters confronting each other and fighting and having this debate of political views almost. But then it takes this breather in the middle for this airport scene that's really fun, and they have the recruitment of Ant-Man and Spider-Man, which are mostly comedic scenes, both of those. And it's a very fun middle of the movie, but I feel like that is just kind of lifted out of a different movie, because the rest of this movie is very serious, and I think tonally it kind of stands out. And while it's probably the most enjoyable, fun, most rewatchable part of the movie for sure, I mean, the fight scenes are fantastic, I just feel like it doesn't serve necessarily the overall movie and as far as tone goes. The other problem in this movie is that I feel like nothing necessarily mattered, you know? By the end of this movie, none of the characters really have any kind of physical toll taken, except for Rhodey, who gets his legs hurt and is having trouble walking, and that's sad, sure, but no one dies, which I like all these characters, I don't want any of them to die, but it seems like for a movie where so much of, you know, fighting and infighting happens, I feel like there weren't very many consequences for this movie. And I guess a lot of this could be the lead up to Infinity War, so we can see where these heroes stand there, but I'm guessing that they're all going to join forces and fight Thanos, so I'm guessing that the conflict in this movie might not matter too much. There might be some references, but maybe not matter too much when they're trying to stop the guy who's trying to destroy the world. Just guess. But I mean, for this movie, there's so much conflict, and yes, half of them do end up in prison, but the whole end of the movie is Captain America showing up and implying that he's breaking them out of prison. So they get in prison, and Tony Stark seems like he's on board with that, because he even gets the call from General Ross saying, hey, there's a problem at the prison, and Tony Stark's just like, I'm gonna put you on hold. So it seems like Tony Stark's even fine with it, and Captain America sends this letter to Tony Stark that Tony's reading, and it's like, hey, I know we have our differences, I know that we came to blows and whatnot, but if you need me, I'm here for you, we're still friends, buddy. And it just seems a little too convenient. I almost wish that they ended on worse terms. And I mean, I like that I think they work well together, I like their chemistry, I like that they're on the same side, and I like seeing that. But I think this movie kind of lacks the consequences of this big fight, you know? You kind of just jump straight to, oh man, I'm sorry, bro. I think that this movie had the potential to be a huge game changer for the MCU, but like the airport fight, they pulled their punches, and they didn't hit as hard as I think that they should have for the consequences in this movie. And I know I seem negative in this review. A lot of this is nitpicking, to be honest, because this is a very fun movie. It's very well directed, it's very well acted, and I really do enjoy this movie despite all the negatives that I just brought up. However, I just don't love it as a lot of the other Marvel movies. And I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion. A lot of people think that this is the best one, and I can see why they think that, you know? I definitely enjoy this movie a lot. I just don't love it, and I wish I did. So, what do you guys think of Civil War? You think it's the best? You think it's the worst? Somewhere in the middle? Let me know down in the comments below. And please leave a like. It really helps me out. It helps with the YouTube prioritization of advertising or some shit. I don't know how YouTube really works. I've been on here for years and I still can't figure it out. And hit subscribe to see that next video. Thanks.
Ding dong. Can I get a knee-how up in the sissies? She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. Woo woo. Ah, the Duala Dean of Man. Professor Kane has resigned and your biology class has been canceled. Trick or Dean.